Howdy my totally tubular gamers, it's your boy, totally tubular Jonathan here, and we're going to do another ranking video. Now, when it comes to animated movies, I think one of the absolute kings of animated movies is Shrek 2. I think a lot of people would argue that not only it is the greatest animated movie ever, but it is one of the best movies ever made. The cultural phenomenon that is Shrek 2 cannot be understated. And for myself included, I absolutely agree. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece in just about every single aspect, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I saw it in theaters as a kid, and I've seen it pretty recently a bunch still, and I absolutely love it. There is just very little wrong with Shrek 2, and I think it's one of the rare times in cinema history where the sequel is just way better than the first one. And naturally, for such a popular movie amongst basically everyone, you know there was going to be some video games. But there wasn't, one, maybe two video games based off Shrek 2. No, there's actually been a handful of video games based off Shrek 2, which is why I'm here today. I'm here to rank all of the games based off Shrek 2. We're not ranking every Shrek game. We'd be here a while if we were doing that. We're going to rank every Shrek 2 game. Yep, if it's based off Shrek 2, it's on this list no matter how obscure, weird, or odd it is. I've played it in some way. To be fair, I played most of these back in the day as I had younger siblings that were even more in love with Shrek 2 than I am, so I've touched just about every one of these games even then. But I won't be talking about old cell phone games like the Shrek 2 trivia game on it. I have no experience with that, and I don't think anybody cares about that. And when it comes to the rankings, we're going to be ranking them based off of everything, but also how well do they follow the movie? Like for real, low-key, high-key, do they actually follow the movie in some way, shape, or form? I've got very fond memories with a lot of these games. I really do love a lot of these games, so let's just get right into it. What do I think is the worst of the Shrek 2 games? And at the bottom of the list, we have Shrek 2 Ogre Bowler by Wild Tangent Games. Now, in 2004, Wild Tangent Games would release a game called Polar Bowling. It was a game where you launched a polar bear into some bowling pins. It was bowling. It was bland, generic, basic, and nobody gave a crap about it. However, that same year, they reskinned it as Shrek 2 Ogre Bowler and released that. Literally the exact same game. They released it again. And I can say without a doubt that this is one of the worst bowling games ever made. It is one of the worst Shrek games of all time, and it is absolutely not worth playing. It is basic, it is bland, it is generic, it is not fun, it does not feel good. There is nothing good to this game. It is just an abomination. You can actually still buy it on the website, but you can also find it for free online. And I wouldn't recommend either, as it's just awful. The game also got in trouble for allegedly being really harmful code to a computer, and it could track your keystrokes, and it was like, yeah, no, the game was allegedly spyware, basically. Do not bother. And so here we have Shrek 2 Activity Center Twisted Fairy Tale Fun for the PC. Now, I actually had this as a child. It was for my younger siblings that were really into Shrek 2 also, and it definitely catered towards them more than it catered towards me, who wanted to go play Mario. This is more of a point-and-click minigame collection for very young children. I would say it's better than, say, an educational Shrek game, which there are plenty of, but this game doesn't really have all that much going for it. It really is just a bunch of very, and I mean very basic mini-games based loosely off the Shrek 2 movie, but the game isn't actively spyware, it isn't a reskin of some awful bowling game, and as a kid, a very young child could have fun with this. But yeah, as a kid, I remember playing this game for like less than an hour, and I was done with all the minigames. There just wasn't really a lot to see, and all of them are super basic. The only one that gave me any challenge was the one where you have to match colors or whatever with Shrek because I'm colorblind. But besides that, I was like, these are all really basic. There's not much to it. It's barely much of a game, but it's better than bowling. But there's no point in playing it now. There really isn't. And so here we have Shrek 2 for GBA. Yeah, it was just literally titled Shrek 2 for Game Boy Advance. Now, Shrek 2 for Game Boy Advance is a 2D platformer that is more on the puzzle elements than actual platforming elements. It obviously follows the plot of the movie, and it does so pretty decently. It goes through a lot of the major plot points, but yeah, the platforming itself is pretty interesting. See, you actually get to play as a bunch of different Shrek characters, not just Shrek. You play as Shrek, Donkey, Fiona, Human Shrek, Puss in Boots, Gingy. And all of them have different abilities. They can all do different things. Like Shrek is really strong, but he's slow. Gingy can jump super high and has a projectile. Puss in Boots can climb on stuff. They're all pretty different to each other. And a lot of these levels lean much more on exploring the environment and figuring out how to get to certain locations using certain characters. It is much less of a traditional standard point A to B left to right platformer, and that's honestly what I probably would have wanted from this, because this whole puzzle platformer element just kind of goes on and on. It feels really tedious to try to get all the characters to the end and get through these obstacles, and a lot of the levels, I mean, they just kind of drag. I've heard someone compare this game to moving chess pieces along the level, which each chess piece is a character, and you know, that's a pretty accurate statement, and this game just really didn't do it for me. Even as a kid, I was like, I don't like this, and coming back all these years later, it's like, I mean, I guess it's better than bowling in the minigame collection, but it's still not worth playing. Alright, and our next game is Shrek 2 Beg for Mercy on Game Boy Advance. Yeah, there was 2 Shrek 2 games released in the same year on Game Boy Advance. Now, how did they do this? How did the same company do this? Well, they reused like all the assets from that Shrek 2 GBA game and put them in here. But I think this game is a little better. I wouldn't say it follows the movie all that well. It just kind of goes all over the place and shows things from Puss in Boots' perspective for the most part. I mean, most of the game is about Puss in Boots, but when it comes to the assets, yeah, it really is exactly the same. The music, for some reason, isn't the same. The music was kind of nice in that GBA game, but it's not the same here. And while the game looks the same, it actually does play a little different. Since it is more focused just on Puss in Boots, there's a lot less of that moving each character through the puzzle environment. It's a lot more linear and straightforward, and in my opinion, that just makes it a lot easier to play. The levels are a little more interesting. There's nothing too crazy here, and it is a pretty substandard 2D platformer for the GBA, but I mean, it's passable. Keeping it mostly to one character really does make it better. It makes it a bit more streamlined, and that whole puzzle element's just kind of gone. I mean, there's some little puzzles here and there, and there is some exploration you have to do, but it's nothing compared to that last game, and it's really just better. I kind of wish I had this game as a kid instead of that other GBA game. I would have liked this more, but oh well, I'm just gonna go cry about it every night till I fall asleep. But you don't need to, because there's really no point in playing this game nowadays, but know that it is better than Shrek 2 GBA. And so here we have the PC version of Shrek 2. Now, the PC version of Shrek 2 is very different from the console version. And I actually have a lot of fond memories playing this game on the family computer. The family really did love the Shrek 2 PC game, and you know, I still do have a lot of nostalgia and fond memories with this game. Playing it all these years later, yeah, it's not amazing and it does have some flaws and it is pretty short, but I still think it is a pretty decent platformer. And I actually think that it follows the movie really well. It might follow the movie the best out of all of these games, really. It follows all the major plot points, it really hits everything, and it expands, you know, a bunch of areas that are in the movie for maybe like a minute, like when Shrek's in the woods near the beginning of the movie. Interestingly enough, the game actually runs on Unreal Engine 2, which is just something I'd never thought I'd say for a Shrek game, that it runs on Unreal Engine. And if you think that's weird, the controls are weird too. It's standard like PC game controls. WASD to move, look around with the mouse, and you jump with the right mouse button. You can't map it to spacebar either, which is really odd. But yeah, the game is your pretty standard linear platformer with some occasional beat 'em up elements. I mean, nothing ever gets challenging, and the platforming doesn't ever get challenging because for some reason this game just has like auto platforming. You just look at the platform and then jump, and it'll automatically jump there for you, especially towards the end of the game. So goodbye challenge. And there's nothing really to even say about the beat 'em up combat. I mean, you're done with it in like 30 seconds. All the enemies in the area will be defeated, and that's a lot of this game, just going through the woods, attacking enemies, and doing some basic platforming. The game tries to mix it up a little bit. I mean, it does have the occasional minigame, and there even is a level where you get to play as the giant gingerbread man and destroy stuff. I mean, that was fun as a kid. Nowadays, I'm like, wow, these controls aren't so great, but it was fine enough. And yeah, Shrek 2 PC, I mean, it's okay, I guess. It is really short, and it probably is a bit difficult to get working on modern computers, but it's not the worst thing in the world, and it's certainly not even close to the worst Shrek game. I remember there were even these wanted posters you could collect. Yeah, there was actually collectibles, and I remember as a kid trying to 100% and find all of them. That was fun, but a lot of this game for me is just nostalgia and good memories. I can't really say it's a great game, but it is what it is. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. And in my opinion, the best Shrek 2 game and just best Shrek game in general is Shrek 2 for the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, and known as Shrek 2 Team Action on the PC. This is the 4-player brawler that most people probably know. Now, this game is probably one of my most nostalgic games like ever. I remember getting this game for my birthday, actually, back when it came out. I was crazy excited for it. I fell in love with this game. I played it endlessly, and all these years later, oh, this is still a fantastic beat 'em up in my opinion. I think it's one of the best beat 'em ups like ever. I still think it is a very good game, and I think it's one of the best licensed games ever made. I think this game is supremely underrated. Like, I genuinely think it is incredibly underrated, and it should not be missed by fans of beat 'em ups or Shrek, because it just doesn't get much better than this. The movie basically follows the plot. I mean, it has like all of the important parts of Shrek 2, even some of the lesser important parts, but it throws in a ton of extra stuff as well to create a ton of original levels, original enemies, and set pieces. And yeah, the game is a 4-player brawler. You can play with 4 people, or if the AI join you, and you go through these pretty linear levels for the most part, just beating the crap out of everything, punching stuff, so much fun. And there is actually a ton of playable characters in this game, and all of them have unique combos and unique attributes. And it's not just the Shrek cast either, like the main 4. Like, there's a bunch of the fairy tale characters like the Big Bad Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, Gingy. And I think playing through these levels is actually really fun, and they still are pretty good. They're not the most advanced, of course. It is mostly a very, again, linear beat 'em up, but they do throw some little side objectives in that you can do and you have to do for a few of these levels, and I actually really did like how it tries to mix it all up. You're not just beating up everything. There's a little variety to it. There's a ton of bosses here, and there's even collectibles. There's like these slug things you collect, and I remember looking all over these levels as a kid to try to get these. And at the end of every level, there's a hero time mission, and these are just totally different from the main kind of gameplay. It's all these different kinds of little mini games they throw in here, and I always really liked the hero time missions. I think the soundtrack is actually pretty underrated. It's a banger, it's a bop. It's actually really good also. The presentation was pretty decent for the time, and yeah, I just think that this is actually a really swell game, and I know that I am not alone when I say that this game has a lot of nostalgia for me, and it's actually a lot of fun, and again, a lot of good memories. Shrek 2 Team Action, whatever you want to know it as, is the best Shrek game. It is still a pretty good beat 'em up. It has really good pacing. It doesn't go on too long because it would get pretty repetitive. It just kind of ends right at the moment when, yeah, it would start to get repetitive. Anyway, it's a really good game. These are all the Shrek 2 games that I know of, minus mobile games. And yeah, Shrek 2, not the best track record for games, but I think Shrek 2 / Team Action, the OG, the console one that everyone knows and loves, totally made it worth making this entire list. But all these other games, yeah, you could probably just ignore. Anyway, that's it for this list. Hope you all enjoy. Let me know down below what your favorite Shrek 2 game is or Shrek game is. Have a good one. See ya.